This is part 5 of the series of sulfur in your microbiome health. And this is the part where I'm really going to get into how does sulfur impact your microbiome. This is definitely very important for people that have digestive symptoms, that have been diagnosed with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or some kind of dysbiosis that's causing problems in the larger small intestine and even in the stomach. So let's get into this. Beyond supporting your gut lining in terms of improving motility, elasticity, recoil, permeability, all the great things that your digestive system does. So in addition to that, GI Janelle 1 powder can improve your gut flora. And again, this is where it gets really interesting. Sulfur can be used as a natural antimicrobial and a natural antifungal, and we've known that for a long time. Sulfur has been recognized throughout history as an antibacterial agent, and it's been given orally for bacterial infections and been used topically as a fungicide and a bactericide in the treatment of cutaneous diseases. Sulfur is the oldest known fungicide in organic farming, and it's the only one that you can use in organic farming because it's natural. So if you use it correctly, GI Janelle 1 sulfur can reduce bacteria and yeast overgrowth in the gut and improve symptoms of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, and small intestinal fungal overgrowth, or SIFO. There was a study in Frontiers in Microbiology in 2022 that found that MSM sulfur improves the gut microbiome in animal species. In this particular case, they studied cats. We need more research, including human studies, to understand everything more clearly, but there is the growing evidence of experience from functional medicine doctors that suggests that using sulfur can be beneficial for those with overgrowth and imbalances in the microbiome. What's interesting is that we find that the people who tolerate the sulfur the least in terms of the high sulfur foods are the ones that need it the most. So these are the people that have trouble eating things like broccoli, cabbage, garlic, onions, Brussels sprouts. Not only are those really hard to digest foods because of the fiber content, but they also contain copious amounts of sulfur. So the way that I go about this is to replace the sulfur deficiency and then reintroduce those healthy foods. That's really important to me, to not have my patients on long-term restrictive diets. So there's actually even some research now that's showing that the hydrogen sulfide form of SIBO is a compensation for an actual internal sulfur deficiency. You know how the microbiome is communicating with our nervous system and our body all the time via chemical messages. So the body can tell the microbiome, hey, listen, we are so sulfur deficient here right now. We need to upregulate hydrogen sulfide as some kind of compensation for this. So at least we're getting a little bit of usable sulfur in the body. Hydrogen sulfide can diffuse across the gastrointestinal membrane, go to the brain, and be converted to sulfate for usable sulfur. I also found a study recently that showed that when you give, this was done in chickens, when you give chickens a diet of that includes supplemented MSM, not only do all the growth parameters increase, every single one of them, hydrogen sulfide production decreases. You give them sulfur, they make less sulfur gas. So that's another argument in favor of the fact that some of these forms of SIBO, including the hydrogen sulfide dominant SIBO, might be a compensation for a sulfur deficiency. And this also can explain why eating high sulfur foods like broccoli and cabbage might cause more gas. The microbiome is trying to make up for this deficiency in its own balance. So once you accumulate the sulfur that you need by a slow titration of your GI Janelle 1 powder, the gasiness can resolve. it brings your microbiome back into balance. If you start with a low dose and gradually increase it over time, it can eventually reduce the gassiness and even eliminate gassy bloating completely as the microbiome regains its balance or homeostasis. Think about it this way. I believe your body has an innate wisdom that's working all the time to keep you healthy. Our body is always working by sending chemical messengers in our blood back and forth. If we're sulfur deficient, again, then the microbiome gets the message that it needs to help us shift to make hydrogen sulfide gas that can be converted to usable sulfate in the body. So the sulfate-reducing bacteria are trying to provide us with sulfur. The sulfate-reducing bacteria in your gut will start dying off, leaving more room for the beneficial microbiome and gut microbiome balance once the sulfur deficiency is met. Symptoms of gut microbiome imbalance can finally start to improve, resolving your SIBO for good and improving your overall health.